The world's information is now available to me for a conversation, in my context, in the language I speak, in the words I use, in analogies I can understand, not in giant government documents like this or fact sheets that don't answer my question that are like that.
Welcome to the GovComms podcast, bringing you the latest insights and innovations from experts and thought leaders around the globe in government communication. Now, here is your host, David Pembroke.
Welcome to GovComms, a podcast about the function of communication and engagement in government and the public sector. My name is David Pembroke. Thanks for joining me. Today, it's a bit of a walk down memory lane for me because GovComms was launched way back in 2015. And at the time of when we started to talk about content in government, there was a young man running around in Victoria making a big name for himself around the internet and the importance of strategy, the importance of content. And he's joining me today. So, Pete Williams, welcome to GovComms.
The world's information is now available to me for a conversation, in my context, in the language I speak, in the words I use, in analogies I can understand, not in giant government documents like this or fact sheets that don't answer my question that are like that. Thanks, David. Great to be here. Good topic too, one I'm pretty passionate about.
Yeah, well, let's go back to those days because you were certainly one of the leaders in and around that time that was talking about the importance of government communications, talking about the importance of technology and the importance of government understanding the potential of technology to be able to explain policies, programs, services and regulation. You were well ahead of your time in terms of getting that message across. And really, I think even to today, there is still a job to be done. But take us back to perhaps your career and the early stages of your career, because even well ahead of 2015, going way back to sort of 1996, 1997, you transitioned from chartered accountancy into technology because you had a pretty good view as to where everything was coming.
Yeah, so it actually goes back to 1993 when the web first emerged, when you had that sort of convergence of hypertext protocol, the WC3 protocols and the browser, the Mosaic browser. So I went to the internet for the first time then and thought, wow, this is going to change everything. So I sort of immersed myself for the next few years there. I was living in the UK at the time and experimenting and developing and delivering training materials across the firm I was with, etc. And then I came back to Australia and I said to the people at Deloitte, I want to start an e-business consulting group. And they were like, oh, what's that? And I'm like, well, it's to do with the internet. And they said, oh, what's that? And I said, oh, don't worry, it's going to be bigger than electricity. Just back me. And fortunately they did. And we set up a e-business consulting group then. And that we then bought a web dev company in 2000 called Eclipse. And I became the CEO of that. And then it was a wholly owned subsidiary of Deloitte, which ultimately became Deloitte Digital, which is now a giant global behemoth in the digital services space. So, but if you go back to that time in 1996, we had a really, I suppose, visionary type leader, Alan Stockdale, who was talking a lot about multimedia then, but it was the precursor to the digital era that we know now. So, so we've gone through lots of changes where at times we're seeing governments lead, and then other times like now we see governments lagging. And I think in this new era, the world has completely changed in terms of the relationship we can have with information. So, yeah, all of those old problems don't have to exist anymore.
So how do you see it, though, evolving through this period? Obviously, artificial intelligence is changing pretty much everything in the way that we operate, the way that we engage, the way that we create information, the way we distribute, the way we evaluate, everything that goes with it. Where do you sit now? And it's a very, I think, informed view that you will have, given your place as the sort of chief edge officer at Deloitte and your understanding of that global view of where we are in terms of government communicating more effectively with citizens and stakeholders.
Yeah, so I think you sort of need to be a bit of a historian if you're going to be a futurist. So if we look back pre-internet, the notion of our relationship with information tends to be place. So if I wanted a book, I either go to a bookstore or a library, or I might have it on the shelf or at school. If I wanted news or magazine, I went to the newsagent. If I wanted anything that wasn't just being broadcast on a schedule, I went to the video shop, like for a film. I bought an album. It had to be near my record player, or I listened to the radio. So our relationship with information was pretty limited. The web came along, and suddenly it meant that over a period of time, information could be published online. And then we moved into this sort of transactional world where we could, fill in forms and, do administrative tasks. But the issue was that the information that we got it in the form that it was published, not necessarily in the form that we needed it. And we needed to have the capacity to comprehend it, to read it. Move into the world of generative AI. The world's information is now available to me for a conversation in my context, in the language I speak, in the words I use, in analogies I can understand, not in giant government documents like this or fact sheets that don't answer my question that are like that. So to me, this is a fundamental change in the way that we experience and deal with information. And to me, it's as profound as the internet. The other thing that it also means is that we're going to see technology interfaces go from know this menu and click here and go there to let's have a conversation, I'll fill the bloody form in for you. And that's happening slower than I think. But yeah, so I see a fundamental change in our relationship with information and the way that we interact with technology. But other than that, not much change.
Now, but the big challenge is, and this audience largely at GovComms is people who are working in government communications, preparing for this new world in a government environment, which is risk averse in many ways, and justifiably so, because of the sensitivities of data and the management of citizens' data, etc. What advice do you have to them as to how they need to prepare to become more effective, and how can they become advocates in their agencies and departments to be more effective?
Well, I think the sort of scar of robo-debt sort of creates this sort of issue in Australia. And robo-debt had nothing to do with AI. It was a bad algorithm based on incorrect rules that led to an automation of bad decisions. So not AI. The frustrating part for me is that we are well behind. And that is not just a criticism of government, but I also see the same issue when I talk to boardrooms and executives around Australia. We have led in this country with a threat-based narrative, like, oh, AI is bad and, it's going to take all the jobs and, oh, look, this is a big problem. Where have you looked at, say, somewhere like the UK or, of course, if you want good government and digital, you go to Estonia. It's an opportunity-based narrative. It's an enablement and empower-based narrative. It's about saying, okay, hey, this is huge. We can actually service our citizens so much better. We can actually manage government so much more effectively. But we need to actively embrace it. We need our people to learn how to do it. We need to provide the tools and the environment to allow them to actually use this stuff. I did a podcast a couple of years ago for the IPAA, and I'm like, well, build your muscle internally. Like, my number one thing for any organisation is, well, the days of read the manual, we don't need to do that anymore. Hey, put your manuals online, or in terms of even just internally, just put all your manuals internally online, and then learn by internal use of, hey, how do I claim this expense, or what am I supposed to do if this happens, or what does a cabinet briefing paper look like? All of that stuff you could provide to your people. But I am saying that what we need to do is get everybody around the table. It's not a technology issue. It's not a people issue. It's not a security issue. It's an everything issue. So get the senior leaders around the table and say, okay, what are we going to start with? And let's start somewhere safe, our own stuff. How can we verify that? Well, we wrote it. We've got it. We can curate it. Sure, from a data point of view, well, let's make sure we've put the current information in the right place so we don't have like 15 versions of a policy that's changed over 20 years. So, okay, let's put current policies. Let's make sure we curate and manage the data, and let's get it out there to people. Provide them a chatbot. Make it easy to work. Simple. But through that, we start to build experience. One thing that I see is a major problem is that the people who are running, Senate committees and all of that stuff, they don't use this stuff. Like, oh yeah, let's make all these big decisions and set a policy. Well, do you use it? Well, no, we don't use it, but geez, we know how to make policy about it. It's nonsensical. But if you looked over at, say, the UK and the guy who was leading it over there, or even people like Victor Dominello, like these, or Ed Husick or Kate Lundy in her day, Alan Stockdale in his day, you had people who were passionate about this stuff, engaged with this stuff, and were in a position to make really good policy and drive the opportunity-based narrative and move beyond the threat. So understanding, sure, there's governance and risk challenges, but they're all manageable, but you ain't going to manage them if you don't actually start using this stuff. And the other issue that I have is, whilst I am seeing bits of movement in Australia, it's still very internal. The time has moved from, hey, we need to learn how to use this internally, to how are we servicing our citizens by providing chatbots that give us the answers that we need, as opposed to giant pieces of, PDF files 150 pages long that I can't find anything in. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's a journey, isn't it? It's a skill set, it's a mindset, and to address that issue there of the threat narrative. You mentioned that really it's about starting, it's about experimentation, it's about permission, but and we are some distance from that opportunity narrative here in Australia. But clearly you think that experimentation and permission has to be the way for us to start to build some sort of momentum.
I think, to be honest, it's almost beyond that. Like I work with a lot of organisations. I tend to find that in any organisation I work with, it's like 10 to 15% of your people are really good at this stuff. You've probably either you don't give them, organisations don't give them access to the tools they need, or they might give them sort of a version of Copilot or something. And then those people go and pay their own subscriptions and are using it in really advanced ways, sometimes with the approval or imprimatur of the organisation they're with. Other times it's like, hey, I just want to make my life easier. I'm going to be much more productive and do much more work. So first thing is we've gone beyond, hey, we need to centrally decide everything. We've got people in all organisations who are good at it. What I also find is that there's a big chunk of people who are what I'd say are cautious beginners, where they're not clear on what they can and can't do. They understand there's opportunity to do stuff, but like, where does that sit and can I do that? So again, I think it's now the time to say, right, we're going to provide you with the environment, the tools, the clarity as to what you can and can't do, and we're going to make it easy to do it. So if you look at, say, Singapore with the One Service tool, if you're a government person, you're going to post a publication out there. Let's say it's a policy draft or a report from a Senate committee or a review of payment systems or something. You can turn that into a chatbot, and there's about 12,000 of them. Now, is that good or bad? Well, some people would say, oh, you should have one. Okay, we'll go to Estonia. They've got one called Bureaucrat, in however Estonians spell that. But in Australia, we're still not even at that point. So I think personally it's time to say, well, let's get on the front foot here, and we know how to do this. The other thing from a risk point of view, before we put something out, you can do what's called AI red teaming. Just the same way you wouldn't launch a website without doing a bit of attack and penetration, hacking sort of stuff to sort of find any gaps. There are people out there who do that work, and they will run through everything you do. They'll try and manipulate it. They'll try and sort of make it say the wrong thing. They'll try and confuse it so it gives wrong answers, and then come back to you and say, right, here's how you got to change the prompts to make sure it doesn't do that. So it's all very doable, but I think, the train's left the station, and it's not about then sort of walking down to the next platform, at a slow pace. We need to say, well, how do we start to get a bit more aggressive and leverage the learnings that we can find from around the world?
But also, what are the risks to government when citizens start to have experiences in their relationship with their banks and with the other retailers who are far more sophisticated in their use and application of AI to communicate and engage with them around solving whatever particular problem that might be. Do you see that as presenting some sort of risk to government if they're not prepared to move a bit faster, where people's expectations are in a different place? Yeah.
It's always been the case that, you don't get compared to people or organisations of the like nature. You get compared to what is the best experience I'm having in my digital life, and why can't I do that? And I find it interesting because I've built a number of government-related chatbots to help citizens around natural disasters. I built one for my 95-year-old aunt to navigate the My Aged Care system and support at home, which was simplified by taking 4 packages into 8. And she was a book publisher with, I think it was Penguin Books, and she rang me up. She's got a full marbles about it. And she's like, I'm getting all these giant printed documents with people coming to do these assessments of me, and I can't make head nor tail of them. And I'm like, well, what do you want to know? And she's like, well, I'm going to have to pay a co-contribution. I know that, but how do I pay it? Does it come out of my pension, or what happens? And it's like, there's 157 pages of stuff and payment, and upload it into ChatGPT, turn it into a GPT. How do you pay it? Oh, okay, it gets direct debit out of your bank account. And then I'm like, well, why don't I just take the whole bloody thing and turn it into a navigational chatbot, put guardrails around it, and make it so anybody who wants to go through the torturous process of navigating the aged care system can. And again, it was something.
And have you published that somewhere? Can people?
Yeah, it's a
get a hold of
GPT
that
on
if they need to?
ChatGPT. Yeah, so if you go to
right.
ChatGPT, GPTs, and look for My Aged Care Support in Home, you will be able to navigate that system. And it's got guardrails. It's like, don't politicise. If you're unsure, say you don't know. Provide always scaffold answers with links to websites, phone numbers, emails. Disclaimer: hey, use this as general advice. Talk to your assessor or provider beforehand. So it's like, but then the other thing is, it can also, if you can speak any language. And I've made sure that it's conversational. So, and I've tested it with colleagues who are Vietnamese, Hindi, Chinese, Greek, Italian, French, and its tone is conversational. So I look at that and think, if, some yobbo like me can whack one out there in half an hour, why isn't this happening more? And then you look at, say, Singapore, and you're like, well, these guys have actually said this is a good way of doing stuff, so we'll create a tool that allows you to publish these things. So, when we're putting out government information, this sort of notion of, wow, we're putting it out to the citizens, so we have to put every last thing out there. It's sort of like the car manual when all you want to do is find out how to change daylight savings, but good luck. And it's like, well, and sometimes, and so with, My Aged Care, they've developed a sort of wizard tool where you can step through and go through everything. And that's good if you're ready to go through the whole process. But other times it's like, I just want to know this bit. So, and AI allows you to do that. And it's sort of, again, I've segmented it so don't go out to the web and do everything. You can look at this website. You can look at all the documents uploaded into the GPT. So, I did one. I do a lot of work in disaster recovery. So I've done one for the Colvin Review and navigating the payment systems for disaster recovery. That's another little bit of complexity in there. And I built one for community recovery committees. Again, I've curated what I consider to be the best content around community-led recovery. And again, so communities are going through problems. I was up in Longwood last week, and with the mass fires up there, a couple of hundred homes lost. Talking to communities, but also saying, hey, if you want to, look at some stuff when I'm gone, just have a look at this. Did it with Halls Gap last year as well after the Grampians fires there. So again, I look at it and think, if some bloke run around the joint in disaster zones or dealing with elderly people, I'm also at a bowls club, so that helps. Why is the penny not dropping?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, well, actually, another question then. Perhaps in your role as the Chief Edge Officer at Deloitte's Centre for the Edge Australia, what are the most common requests that you're receiving from government, be it at a local government, state government, or federal government level? What are the biggest problems that they're turning to Deloitte Digital and saying, we need you to help us solve X, whatever that is?
To
What
be
is
honest,
that?
I'm not in that front line so much, but there are. I mean, I know that the guys do a lot of work with the various services departments. They've done some work with internal systems for education and all that stuff. So there is some good stuff happening, but internal. But and again, a lot of the risk stuff. I think again, our risk people and trustworthy AI people would be extremely busy. But I'm not just seeing this sort of mass adoption where it's being led at a political level as well as, hey, we've really got to move on this. And we are seeing things like co-pilot trials. There's an interesting trial that some local government are doing with a thing called My Lot. There's an Australian company called Archistar that that basically does the first cut review of planning permits, and very strong across US and Canada. Not so much in Australia, but there's a project with them and the University of New South Wales, PEXA, called Urban Co-Pilot, where they're looking at how they can actually change the whole way urban planning works. So we're seeing, again, experiments, pilots, toe in the water stuff, but we're not seeing this sort of jump in and make things happen. So, and I think, again, Singapore have got one. I'm on the Law Council's Futures Committee, notwithstanding that I'm not a lawyer, but Singapore have got a thing called Pair Search, where you can go on and it's got Hansard legislation, policies and all that stuff, so you can have a conversation about, what's the government policy on AI and, what has been said in Parliament about it and all this sort of stuff. So, again, it's, to me, there's a thing there. The other one, if I was in a government role now and say, what would you do? I'd say, go and have a look at what they did at gov.uk and roll that out. Lots of training, lots of access to tools, access to each other, access to experts, and make it happen. But again, I'm just not seeing it here.
Yeah. So that is, do you think will it ever happen? Will it ever
it will
find its
happen,
way but in a piecemeal, uncomfortable, lumpy,
Yeah,
unsatisfactory way?
Yeah. And I think it's that sort of thing where, as I say, Australia, we used to be seen as leaders. Like back in the day, I used to find back in the day when I was running the web stuff, government were my first clients. The ones who were doing the adventurous stuff, pushing the needle, and then you saw financial services and banks. So we were the country that was the number one in use of online banking back in the early 2000s, and number one pirators of movies and stuff. Like we adopted the maybe it's a convict background, the adoption of sort of digital channels to do stuff. So we're actually a pretty capable digital society, but somewhere along the way we've lost that. And again, I think there's an opportunity to get it back, but it's first mindset you mentioned before. Okay, we understand the threats. Don't worry about that. We've got everybody lining up telling you what can go wrong. Now we have to get the people who can say, okay, where is the value and how do we make it go right? Because, the sort of notion of somebody asked me the other day, what do I think about cybersecurity? And I said, look, cybersecurity, very important, but it's all about, what can go wrong and how do we prevent it? We need to be focusing on where is the value, how do we go after it, and then and do that in conjunction with the cybersecurity, making sure things are accurate, understanding how we can do that. And again, but things might be wrong and things might not be perfect. And it's like, well, guess what? Dealing with people can be a problem as well. But I would say things like, hardcore decision making of, like we saw in Robodebt and stuff like that. No, that's, again, that was fundamentally a misapplication of rules. But you've got to get it right, and you've got to, what can go wrong and how do we prevent it? But by the same token, and there's got to be accountability, but by the same token, there's a hell of a lot of things we can do. which are pretty low risk and probably give you a better citizen experience, better return on investment, better productivity in government. And, take the property and planning permit one. Hey, we've got a housing shortage and everything and too much red tape. Well, here's this mob called Star in New South Wales. Go up the road and get them going because it's working in Austin. LA implemented it after those massive fires there to be able to say, well, wow, we've got thousands of homes literally that have been destroyed. We need to automate that planning process to get them rebuilt. And so again, my disaster recovery stuff is like, hey, if they're doing it there and it's Australian technology, why don't we get on the front foot and go a bit harder? So that would be my advice. It's like there are plenty of examples. There are plenty of ways to look at the economics and business cases. So GovUK, One Service Singapore, Estonia, they've done it before. It's worked. And again, you can see we're going to talk to them. Estonia make everything open source and, they love chatting about what they're doing. So, we've got the capacity. We've got the early adopters have gone. Now we can say, right, okay, they've made the mistakes and the learnings. Why don't we take them and apply them quickly here? So that would be my overall view. And again, we haven't scratched the surface and this will still continue to develop. And what we're doing today, it's a bit like being in 1996 with the internet. Where this will go, it is unresolved. We're not sure. Will it take jobs? Yeah. Will it create jobs? Absolutely. But we're in a different world of information now, and why don't we take advantage of it?
Where do you see, say, the next 3 to 5 years? Have you had to think about where you do see the changes coming and what's going to be, perhaps the 2 or 3 most significant things? Again, in that context of government being able to communicate effectively, and perhaps it's more of a two-way. The listening thing is going to become more important because people are going to have the ability to be able to go direct straight back to government to tell them exactly what they think.
Yeah. So if we look at where we are now, the ability to provide really high quality information in a conversational way to citizens and help them do stuff, really easy. To then say, well, the way that we interact with government, I've got a startup called Packform, and we build an AI bot that helps you design and build and order the packaging you need. So, hey, I've got to package some food and I want to put them in pouches and, okay, based on food, is it human food? Yes, good, you have to have this standard and here's the rules. So in effect, walking people through a conversation and then saying, okay, here's what we think you need to do. Here's the quote form. Do you want to hit submit? So again, the ability to sort of conversationally interact with not just information, but also our technology systems and stuff instead of form fills and all of that type of thing. So I think that notion of transacting information capture can move to be conversational. And I think that will, again, your point of as we start to experience that more and more with the way that we deal with computer software, the expectation is we'll do that with government. Agents running around the place and looking at stuff and reviewing stuff, a la like the Star planning tool, where you've got agents that are reading through it, coming back, doing the report before it gets to human hands. So when it'll kick back and say, okay, look, I'll do the review, I'll write a little report. Do I need a human in the loop? Maybe, maybe not, because I'm not making a decision. Hey, read through your planning thing or your submission here or whatever. It needs this, that's not compliant, etc. So the ability to do things at scale that are complex without the need for humans to incorporate compliance and all that sort of stuff, another great opportunity in terms of the way that we interact with government. So I think moving from pure information provision to that actual sort of transactional nature of government. Then you move into things like, let's say, disaster recovery. So the current model, you burn out, you've lost everything. Now you go and you approach the government and you work out what you got to do and all that, instead of like, I flew a drone over the place. I've identified, 80. I've identified these homes that are lost. I've identified some that might or might not be. Need a human to review that. Great. Oh, who lives there? Oh, we've got all this data about electoral roll, tax files,
Yep.
all the stuff, Medicare, MyGov, whatever. Oh, well, we can infer that These are the people who live there. Oh, why don't we contact them through MyGov and say it appears that you've been displaced by natural disaster. What's your current situation? Here's the help available. Hey, a new grant's come out. Instead of you having to fill in the form, it sends you a text and say, hey, new grant's come out. You qualify based on the information we've got. Do you want it? Yes, good, bang, in a bank account. Just that is a really simple and easy way. And then people say, oh, what about privacy? And it's like, well, give people the option to say, hey, looks like you've been in a bushfire. Are you happy if I share your information with Red Cross and people given grants and all that stuff? And yep, no. Not that hard. But again, it's the thinking is like based upon, I don't know, this sort of divide between citizens and government, rather than saying like, wow, we've got all of this information, all of this data, all of these problems and difficulties that we want to improve. What do we do about it? Yeah. The other one, say education. I saw that the Independent Schools Association, I think they were called, have issued a paper a week or so ago. And again, really saying, hey, look at the value that we can drive and the way that we can actually incorporate AI into education. That doesn't mean that I just put, here's my assignment question, can you write the answer for me? There are good ways and there are bad ways to use it. But yeah, so, I think it's that sort of rethinking. But again, it's going to depend on leadership at a political, at a bureaucracy, at a, applying. I say to people, just apply an AI lens to your big problems and chances are we can solve them to a level.
So are you optimistic through it all? Like you can obviously, I can sense a bit of frustration.
Mate. Nothing ever moves fast enough. Nothing ever moves fast enough for me. People sort of say, how do you think you go as a futurist? They say rarely wrong, but always early. So I wrote a paper a couple of years ago. As sent for the Edge paper for Deloitte called Predicting the Unpredictable around the future of work and AI. And our key point there was, hey, what we're seeing is people deciding to act. So, doing business cases and reviews and lots of strategy in boardrooms and whiteboards. And we said, actually, in a world like this where it is unpredictable, you need to act to decide. You know what? We can, and the picture is a picture of a guy with a baseball mitt, running to catch an outfield catch. It's a global publication, so we went with an American thing. But the whole idea there is that guy doesn't sit back and do sort of a slide rule with projections of, speed and wind velocity and all that. He runs to the bloody ball because he knows the direction it's going. And as he gets closer and closer to it, he's in a better position to decide. So he's acted to be able to make that decision at the end. Does he dive? Does he, stop? Or has he made it easy or whatever? So I'm sort of seeing us work more in this thing of like, we need to be able to make it predictable, and it's not, and it's unresolved. But the other thing is, it's that the people who really know this stuff are the people closest to the work. The people who are at the front line, hearing the problems, understanding who the people they're dealing with, and that can be internally or externally. So it's like, involve them, because those ones who are sort of like me and doing all this stuff at night, or, in their spare time or as their hobby, they know what to do. They know where the problems are. And providing that sort of environment, the tools to be able to leaders sponsor these things and say, right, hey, you lot, who are our best people? What are the biggest problems? And you might find you've got, real advanced users, but you may have some real pragmatists. We find oftentimes there's pragmatists who don't use it extensively, but use it for stuff that is really important. And get them and say, right, what do we need to be doing? Because they know much better than anybody, at a senior level in the bureaucracy, who's not using this stuff. And I go back to that same point about politicians, senior leaders in business, government, doesn't really matter what, but those closest to the work and getting them to surface, getting them to sort of peer-to-peer work together, finding leaders from other jurisdictions or in other departments and sharing what they're doing and learning from each other is how we'll see this thing work best.
But I think there's a clue really to why there is these challenges at the moment in your answer there when you're talking about this notion of acting to decide, because I couldn't agree with you more. But it's almost an inversion of the culture of, no, we make decisions based on evidence. the best available evidence, the business case, and as you say, these are the containers that we then try to put all of our inputs into, and it's only then that we can make a decision to go forward. Whereas you're arguing, and I'm totally agreeing with you, that really there isn't that certainty available, and really it's experimentation
put it
time.
this way, if I know all the variables, I don't know, let's say, when we change light bulbs from incandescents to the LED ones, right? I know the incandescents don't last as long, cost more, burn more, blah, 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 blah. So I know how many lights I need, I know how much they cost, I know the difference in power, I know the price of power. Bang, I can do a business case within 5% because I've got all the variables. When I'm working in innovation, doing something new where there is no evidence base, the acting to decide means where does this thing live or die? Where do I think the value is? Where do I think it's going? And what's the logical next step? And what am I learning from that? So I say to people that in novel ventures, the business case is the worst thing invented in history because you are aggregating guesses at a time when you don't know anything. You're just aggregating guesses and saying, look, here's all these guesses and we think it's going to cost, X billion and all this. It's like, have you tested anything? So what's where does it live or die? What's the fastest, quickest way I can test this stuff? And then once you've done that, then you say, you know what, let's go and scale this up. So, I did one at Deloitte the other day where something that took 4 weeks, I was able to knock out a thing in a taxi ride on the way home that did it in 3 minutes. That's, what's the business case? Well, I don't know what the difference between 3 minutes and 4 weeks is, but it's a lot. You know what I mean? It's like, well, act to decide, can I do this? And that's the thing. It's like often with the innovation stuff, why are you so innovative? It's like, I just always look at it like, can I do this? Who might I know that has done it before? I've got this theory. I'll run it past somebody or, these days I'll run it past Claude or ChatGPT or Google Gemini or whatever one I feel like using at the time. Claude, mate, at the moment. And sort of test this stuff and then say, right, here's my theory, let's go through and then test it with experts and then bang, we're off to the races.
Yeah. So a final question, and perhaps it's to seek your advice, I suppose, for the audience who are sitting back there now and who are probably sitting in an environment exactly as you've described, that there are people who are using it often, as you say, at night, at home, getting ahead. They may be sitting there thinking, well, are the permission structures here or not? How am I going to acquire new skills to be capable and relevant and useful in this new world? What sort of advice would you have to government communicators as they start looking forward to making a contribution into the future? Because people work in government generally to make a contribution. They're there because they want to have an impact. They want to do the right thing. So again, just in closing, what advice do you have for them?
First thing I would do would be, just sort of say, well, if you're in communications, hey, why don't we get together over a brown bag lunch and just share some who's doing what and surface who your people are who are doing stuff. The other one, well, if I'm going to a client, first thing I do is I actually have a system that I use that's an agent that goes and has conversations with people. And we look at, how do you use this stuff? What do you use it for? Are there any barriers or risks or anything, gaps that, make you feel uncomfortable? And just surface like, okay, well, here's the people who are using this stuff. Here's what's missing to make them comfortable. Then the next thing is, can I find a sponsor? The innovation in this world, it doesn't matter what organisation you're in, it's all about politics. It's not about quality of ideas, it's about politics. So is there somebody in our organisation that I know wants to push things forward and has a way of clearing pathways as opposed to creating checkpoints? I'd say great innovation leaders clear pathways rather than create checkpoints. And so find like minds, get them to teach you if you're not really into this stuff or you're only just learning. Find who can be your mentor. Use the tools yourself. Try things, and then then start to say, well, what are the biggest problems that we're dealing with? And here's some of the things that people have done at home. Maybe they haven't launched them, but they're playing around with at home that could really change things. And another one that again, if you can get a sponsor, run a hackathon. like, and get the leaders to be like, what, they did that in 3 hours? Like we spent 400 million trying to solve that problem, and some sort of wackos did it in 3 hours, our people or some people from outside, and it's sort of find the people who are doing.
I love that line. I think that act to decide. That's that is.
But if you don't know, there are people out there, and have a look. So have a look at gov.uk. Have a look at Pair Search in Singapore. Have a look at One Service in Singapore. Have a look what is happening in Estonia and the EU. And again, even then, just say, hey, look, they're doing it here. And the AI thing in gov.uk has got this full-blown training thing of all the training they offer and all that stuff. It's all there. So, just have a bit of a look. And the world's your oyster. Hopefully you can't hear my dog barking at the magpies in the background.
Might be time, Pete, to let you get back, perhaps to feed the dogs. But listen,
dogs,
thank you and congratulations.
No worries.
Congratulations on a great career. As I say, I've watched closely over that long journey. The company that I founded, Content Group, was back in 1997 when we were thinking about this idea of how do we bring communication and technology together. It was a long time ago, but again, observing your journey over time.
You roll in, you set up Riverside, which will cost 2 parts of bugger all. Doesn't matter where we are. We have a rich video conversation, and you can publish it as easy as hell. So,
indeed.
In those days, we were working off modems and video.
The dial-up, the screechy sounds, and all the rest of it. But anyway, congratulations on your career. Congratulations on all of your success, and thank you so much for joining us today. What a pleasure there, ladies and gentlemen, to be joined by Pete Williams, who really is one of the greats of Australian technology, a wonderful leader. And isn't it I just love that idea that he's still hard at it and he's still finding problems.
Mate, I should have been born 20 years later. It's like, I'm thinking like the internet's the biggest thing I'll ever see. And then bloody this comes along. I'm like, shit. People are like, what do you think of quantum computer? I'm like, I don't give a shit about that. I'm going to be dead by then. I'm worried about AI now.
Anyway, very true. But anyway, a leader, a great leader, and again, a man we need to talk to. But and again, that issue about leadership, about moving forward, act to decide, just seek permission, find a sponsor, solve a problem, and just do something. Let's just get up there, get after it, get to do something, because ultimately we do want to help better explain policies, programs, services, and regulation. That's all it's about. Anyway, there we go. Pete Williams joining us, and really what a thrill for you, the audience. Thanks, Pete. Really appreciate that. And to you, the audience, thank you for coming back once again. What a thrill to talk to Pete as he sits there in his lovely bucolic setting there in the country and living a great life, having made a big contribution. But he's still making a big contribution, as are you, the audience. And thank you for sticking around for as many years as you have, and we'll continue just to seek out talking to leaders in our space to try to continue the conversation around how do we better explain policy, programs, services and regulation? How do we better listen? How do we better understand and use these technologies to make our communities stronger, to improve the welfare of citizens and stakeholders? So anyway, a wonderful conversation. I really did enjoy that. And I enjoyed the fact that you turned up once again, audience. So thank you. A rating or a review on your favourite podcast app always helps us to be found. So thank you. If you do have time to do that, doesn't take very long, but it does help the conversation to continue. And as I mentioned to Pete, we've been going since 2015. And there is so much to talk about now into the future. I think we'll be going for many years into the future. But again, thank you for coming back. We'll be back at the same time in about a month's time with our next episode of GovComms. But for the moment, people, please be kind to each other. My name is David Pembroke, and it's bye for now.